exciting. Remember I talked to you about the physician's assistants we had in the class last year and the really cool project that they were doing? He's the man.
Sometimes that's no going. So, we got a remote control? How am I locked into this thing?
You're probably locked in.
Okay, so I can do that, I think. Well, thanks. I know it's late in the day, and I hope that I can go through this and tell you a
Mike,
little bit about
you need your mic.
physician assistants. Do I need a mic?
Yes, you do.
Is that picking up? Okay, great. Well, I am glad to be here, and I thank you for the opportunity to talk about the PA profession and what it means, and I think where its place is in medicine today and where it's going. I've been a PA for 29 years, which is a heck of a long time. I'm certainly older than most of my students now, but that doesn't lessen my enthusiasm for what we're doing and for what we want to do, particularly here in South Texas. All right, which button do I press? Return? Good. One of the things that's always happened as long as we've had the practice of medicines is physicians have delegated duties and responsibilities to others. And during these kind of same periods of time, we've seen changes in the way that people took these responsibilities and how they were dealt out and who could do what, usually during periods of either social change or economic conditions, or when there's shortage of physicians. And if you look across time, there have always been people who did something that physicians did in some way or assumed medical care or things like that. In the United States, probably the best example is independent duty corpsmen that the Navy used to provide medical care on ships and places like that. And as we came to the end of World War II, one of the things that we found in America, and this really involves both a change in medical practice and the way it was conducted and a lot of social change, is that we saw physicians moving from general practice to specialty. And of course, there's a lot of drivers for that. One, specialists get paid a heck of a lot more money. They were trained, there's prestige issues and things like that. And at the same time, as we see this move to specialization in medicine, we also see a movement from rural to urban areas. We see that the persons to physician ratios increases because our population is growing, and our production of physicians was pretty steady and static, and still hasn't kept up with population growth. So that creates access problems, it creates problems with care, and in the 60s, late 50s and 60s, you all recognize that this was a period of great social change in this country. Healthcare became seen as a right of the individual, not a privilege. The civil rights movement certainly plays into that, and equal care and opportunity, and the politics were right. And a lot of times when I talk to people about the establishment of the PA profession, it probably came along at about the right time because we had the need created, we had social change, and the politics were right because in the 60s you had the Great Society. It was a very liberal period in our nation's history in terms of the politics and expanding privileges and rights of those individuals who had not before experienced those. And so in 1965, Dr. Gene Stead, and this is him on the left, who was probably the preeminent physician educator in his time, began a PA program. And one of the things at Duke University, and this is the Duke Chapel, I went to Duke, so I always have to show a picture from Duke and what a great chapel they have in a beautiful place. And Dr. Stead started this program in 1967. The first 3 PAs graduated. So before then, we really didn't have PAs. And the things that drove this is that Dr. Stead was the chief of medicine at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia during World War II. And they ran a service that basically consisted of senior medical students, and this was when medical school was 3 years long, and usually with no one beyond postgraduate training except for interns, because the war effort was siphoning off most of the experienced physicians, and there's huge demand, as you can imagine. And Dr. Stead believed that the quality of care with that was provided in that period by those individuals was equal to that when they had full numbers of medical students, full numbers of residents, and he continues to believe that today. He's still alive. He's about 97 now. And so after he went to North Carolina, he also saw a tremendous shortage of physicians in rural North Carolina. But what he also saw there were lots of physicians training people to work in their offices, to assume some of the duties and responsibilities that otherwise might just fall to the physician. And part of that inspired him or helped him develop this concept. Now, in 1961, the first call for a new level or class of provider was put out by Dr. Charles Hudson to the AMA, and Charles Hudson was the president of the National Board of Medical Examiners at that time. And it was with that and several other prominent physicians in the country that the concept was developed. And initially, it would be based on prior health care experience and across the range, a shorter education and training period, so that you could get more people out. It would be almost entirely primary care oriented, and the education in the classroom and the education in the clinic would really concentrate on applying service skills. And that's important. And the other key part of it would be that the MD would be the captain of the ship, and the relationship between the PA and the MD would be a very close personal working position. And part of that is, at that time, most medical practice was solo or maybe two-person practices, particularly in general medicine. And I say general medicine because we didn't even have the specialty of family medicine when this all started. They started sometimes in the 60s. So it was well designed. It would build off of previous learning, short with strong on application and strong on relationships. And then something happened. We had the war in Vietnam, and this provided a very good group of people with very unique experiences to draw on, and it became a very compelling order. So they took these former corpsmen and medics in Vietnam and turned them into PAs. And because there was such a huge number, and because the war in Vietnam was something that people saw on their TVs, so they saw what the medics in the field could do, they could see what was happening in the field hospitals and the MASH units in those places, and it really was this emphasis. And I don't think Dr. Stead thought about the Vietnam veterans initially, because when he established the program, it was really before we had the upswing in our involvement there. And this is just one of the things that came from the AMA pushing or advertising for former medics to enter the physician assistant profession. It says, we want to put this man in the hospital. And if you could read this, and I don't know if you can, what it says, this man belongs in a hospital or a doctor's office. He's has a year in Vietnam where he was the person who initiated care. He had a large amount of responsibility, and we need to do something with him where we can take those skills and apply them where the need is greatest. And it really, I think, the availability, at least early on, of the Vietnam veteran really led to the success of the PA program. Now, just fast forward, there are now there are about 60,000 PAs in the country, tremendous number of patient visits, over 2 million, large numbers of prescriptions and hospital medical orders. And the Department of Labor has said that the PA profession is one of the fastest growing professions in the country. Now, when you're really small to start with, being fast growing doesn't mean huge numbers, but it's exponential in our increase. So what you see today are PAs working in just about every area of medicine. In fact, I cannot think of any that are where PAs don't work. And so when we look at PAs by specialty, about a third are in family or general medicine, and about a fourth in surgery and subspecialty. Now, geriatrics employs PAs, identifying them as working in geriatric practices or gerontology practices, is about 2%. 2% of 55,000. And then, but when you look at all of this, these are all the other fields. If you look here at the Health Science Center, or Level 1 Trauma Center employs 30 or 35 PAs. Orthopedics, neurosurgery, cardiovascular surgery, trauma, certainly family medicine, and down the line have PAs. The emergency room here, emergency medicine here has just started a residency in emergency medicine for PAs, and I've met with 2 other departments about starting residencies in their program. When we look at who employs PAs, it's not surprising that group practices are the largest. They're the largest employers. And because that's the practice setting, or that's the practice orientation that we have today. The solo practitioner, I'm sorry to say, is probably going to go away pretty soon. There's not many people, and it's getting smaller. And the other group that's a big employer of PAs are hospitals. Right now we have 133 PA programs nationally, about 60,000 PAs. There are 3,300 licensed PAs in Texas, and we have 8 programs in the state. And sometimes that surprises people because we're kind of hidden. But we have our program, of course. Texas Tech has a program, UT Pan American in Edinburgh, Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, University of Texas Southwestern in Dallas, and the University of North Texas in Fort Worth. And despite the number of programs, we still license more people every year than we graduate in Texas. So the demand is there in Texas. And despite all that, we're still kind of relatively unknown. This is, if you can't read the small print, it says a physician assistant is someone trained to down the line. And so we still have an identity problem, and we're doing all we can to change that. So who are PAs? Healthcare professionals, licensed to practice medicine with physician supervision. They provide, whoops, did something magic on me. They can have a large amount of autonomy within practice, and that's determined by physician. There's something like 400 rural health clinics in Texas. 300 of them are manned by physician assistants, and the requirement is that the physician be there 1/2 day per week, or every 2 weeks. But there has to be some form of communication immediately available for the PA to use their physician if they need references. And so it's been estimated that PAs can usually perform about 80% of the duties that a physician can. And I'm not so sure, I'm not sure where that estimation comes, but it's one our national organization puts out a lot. There are probably practices where the PA does 100% of what the doctor does, and there are practices where the PA probably does 10% of what the doctor does. It's really a team concept. PAs can do a number of tests, order tests, interpret, and they also have educational, administrative, and other roles. So if you go to a PA, it's probably going to be the thing that, this thing has a mind of its own, is probably going to be the things that you would expect from a medical encounter. In Texas, we do have prescriptive practice here up through Schedule III drugs, and that's good. You can work without direct supervision, and these are the things that you would expect from a PA. PA practice is defined by state statutes, the rules and regulations formulated by the Board of Medical Examiners and the Board of PA Examiners, that we have both. And ultimately, it all depends on the concept of physician delegation. And that's important in what the PA can do and how they benefit the practice. And always, a PA can only provide those services that are within the scope of their practice and within their own skill and ability. And I think that's probably true for all of us here. You don't try to do something that you don't know how to do or you're not very good at. And a family practice physician couldn't hire a PA to do neurosurgery or something like that. It has to be within the scope of practice. And now, in terms of how are you assured that someone who doesn't go to medical school has a much shorter training and educational period than a physician? How do you assure that the quality of care is there? Well, we have a very rigorous process for accrediting programs. All PAs on graduation have to take a national certifying exam, and every year only about 90% of the people that take that exam do pass. You have to have licensure, you have to be licensed. There are 2 or 3 states that still register PAs rather than license them. But one of the things that the PA profession did as a part of quality assurance that was unheard of at the time that it happened, and is now being picked up by other healthcare professions, they required recertification by examination every 6 years. At the time that that started in the early or mid-70s, that was an unheard of process for health professions. Nobody did it. And including in that recertification is that to maintain certification, every 2 years you have to have 100 hours of continuing medical education. More than most required of physicians. Also, in Texas, to renew your license, you have to have 40 every year, and you can use the same hours, but it's just another way. And ultimately, the physician is the captain of the ship, and he's responsible for what the PA does and how they do it. So I think that when we look at the things that can say to you that your PA is competent, they can do that, these are great markers. And it really is tighter in many ways than most medical, allied health, or nursing services. And did that. I always like this cartoon where he says, I didn't drive 40 miles to see somebody's assistant. I want to see the doctor. And so the doctor goes and tells her, then he comes out and asks the PA what to do. And it's not to take away from the physician, but to point out that in many PA-physician relationship, it's an interdependent team, and each person does what they do well. My first job, I love this, I got to do all our suturing, all our biopsies, I did all our splitting because I did it better than either of my bosses. I wasn't smarter than they were, but I just did those skills. So it's a division. The other thing I love about this, and you can tell this is PA propaganda, the doctor is a little older, he's bald, he's short. Look at the PA. He's got this Tarzan jaw, he's tall, he's got a full head of hair. So, I don't know. Sometimes you have to do what you can do. And like I said, it's a team. And that is really the driving philosophy behind physician assistant practice. It's a team, and we accept that it's a team. It's a team where there is some hierarchy, but the well-functioning PA-MD team is an interdependent team. And that interdependent team may have other members, nurse practitioners, nurses, lab techs, MTs, EMTs, whatever it takes. And the part that benefits practice is one, obviously, that there's greater access for patients if you have more providers. And early on, that was one of the key things that was pointed out. If your practice, and I'm a solo physician, if your practice is overburdening, but you can't afford to bring in another physician yet, the PA may be the way that you do that. There can be a division of duties where people do what they do best within the practice. It may be that many times the physician assistant will take care of those things that are less serious than the disease processes that the physician care for. I always hate using the minor illnesses because an illness is only minor when somebody else has it. So those things are less serious, and those things that may be monitoring activities that may fall to the PA. It certainly can help practice efficiency, and there is a cost saving, and I'm going to come back to that. And the other part that's been driven, particularly when we were looking for people to help relieve the problems in rural areas, is that it improves the quality of life for the practice and its members, and it improves the quality of the practice. I want to go back to cost savings, and we often hear in the things that we talk about PAs that PAs are less costly than physicians. Unfortunately, and my PA colleagues hate hearing this, the cost saving is not to the patient but to the system. Because if you go to a medical practice and you see the PA, your charge is going to be the same as if you saw the doctor. Now, the cost saving comes in that it's a lower cost to the practice, or if Medicare or Medicaid pays for it, there's a percentage payment that way. So in terms of the cost to the individual, the person as an individual, there's probably no difference in the cost and what you have to hand them in greenbacks. Now, over the years, as you can imagine, there's been a lot of controversy about physician assistants, or anyone that's assumed that, nurse practitioners too, about the quality of care. Can someone with a lot lesser training come in and assume medical acts? And generally that's so, and I just kind of bring these out. One of the things that would be interesting to the folks attending here is that there was an article that looked at nursing home visits done by PA more frequently than those that are normally done. Usually nursing home buildings or visits are usually once every week or once every 2 weeks. Well, what they did over a 5-year period, the PA, who was a geriatrics PA, went to the nursing home 3 or 4 times a week. And yes, that may involve an increased cost, but what they saw is a drastic increase in hospital days, length of stay, morbidity and mortality, and about a $400,000 lesser cost for hospital care in that nursing home. One nursing home, one example, but a good one. This year, at the other extreme of life, an article just came out that looked at physician assistants working in pediatric ICUs. And part of the reason they had brought PAs in was to meet the time demands that were created by the limits on residency time. And what they found when they looked at these PAs is that generally, and for the most part, that it was seamless, that the care was there, that the quality of the skills and the quality of the services that the PAs provided were almost undistinguishable from that of the residents. It's interesting, this same story, the biggest problem was the communication between the PAs and the residents, not between the PAs and the attending physicians. And part of that problem is the residents come and go, and the PAs are there all the time. So it's an interesting study, but I think that the key point of it is that the service provided to the PAs was indistinguishable and seamless with that provided by the residents. There was a study that looked at the surgical skills. These are technical skills in stimulated patients between PAs, third-year medical students, and first-year residents. And looking at kind of patient interaction and certain skills, there was no significant difference in the performance of those skills. There have been any number of studies that show patients are satisfied with the services that PAs provide. In fact, I just looked at a study that says that patients can't tell the difference. They can't tell the difference in type of provider for a lot of general services. It's interesting, the one place that patients will make a difference is if the provider is a female, she's always a nurse. It always happens. The female, it doesn't matter if she's an MD, a PA, a nurse practitioner, if she's female, she's a nurse. And part of that is just the stereotyping that exists in our society. The other part that I think that's important for a profession and important for a profession that's controversial at times, that's still relatively new, even though it's been around, is professional satisfaction. And I guess the best indicator of that is that 90% of the people trained as PAs continue to work as PAs. That's probably as high as any profession that you can look at, including medicine. It really points to good things. So what do you expect when you see your PA? Well, the first thing that you should expect is for the PA to be identified to you as a physician assistant. Physician assistants cannot call themselves doctor. When I go and work as a PA, I do not call myself doctor. It would be misleading and confusing. In fact, most of my patients just call me by my first name. My students can't do that, but the patients can. So, clear identification, and the interaction should be quality. Your history, your physical exam, if there's procedures to be done and things like that, should be done as well as any encounter that you've had from physicians or others. Your treatment should be appropriate. And if referral either to the attending physician or the supervising physician or to other areas is necessary, that's done. The other part of that is, I think this is very important, and if you look at some studies that does my physician assistant spend more time with me, and patients universally say yes, whether they do or not, is are your questions answered? And that's very, very important. And I think in the past, too many times people are afraid to ask their physician questions about what's going on, and for some reason are not afraid to ask the PA. It may be hierarchical in thought, but you need your questions answered. And one of the things that we emphasize in our program, and I think it's probably emphasized in most programs, is interacting with people and making sure those questions are answered. And ultimately, the physician has to be available, not always on site, but available in some way for the PA to consult with if that's necessary. There's no doubt that healthcare in the United States and healthcare in the United States is under tremendous, tremendous pressure to meet the needs of huge numbers of people. We have problems with our air quality, water quality, housing, access, people gaining access to health care. And that's one of the things that I think that really adds emphasis for physician assistant as a profession and for us to try to get our physician assistants to go where they're needed. It's so very important. I think right now with an aging population, that's going to create crisis in the future. We can't avoid that. And PA is not the only solution, but it's one of the solutions. It's part of the solution. So and that's why I think the profession's back. I'm going to just give you a little bit about our program. Our program is entering its 5th year. We've already ranked number 14 in the country out of 133 programs. I haven't got this. Texas has 4 of the top 14 in the country, which speaks well. All the programs in Texas are good programs. We are a 3 years master's program. We take 24 students a year. Last year we had 672 applications. Our program is basically a 2-year classroom period with labs, but almost in the first month, our students start going out and interacting with people and patients and healthcare workers. We put them on life flight, we put them in the back of ambulances, we send them to the dental hygiene lab, we are a clinic, we send them to OT. We give them experiences that start helping them to understand what it means. And then 1-year clinical practice, which is clinical rotations like all of us who have been students take, we really have a strong emphasis on South Texas. We send people to Del Rio, Rio Grande City, Laredo, Crystal City, Carrizo Springs, Brackettville, Uvalde, and just about every point in between. Because I think that one of the things that's important is for people to realize what the healthcare needs are in the neediest part of our state, and maybe we can inspire some of them to go back there and be a part of the solution in those areas. Our graduates have a very high certification rate, well above the national average for the period of time that we've been in existence, and everyone who's graduated from our program is employed, at least as far as I know. And that speaks well, and we have a lot of demand for our students. This is a class that's currently in their 2nd year. This is the class that's just entered last year, and we have another class coming in August. This class can't wait for that other class to show up because now they'll be ahead of somebody, and that's really good. So let me stop right there, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Any more? Oh.
Yes, I have one.
All right.
Well, from what I understand, I guess for either med school or PA, you have to do your 4-year bachelor.
Not true.
No, you don't. Okay, because I was going to ask, if you're already going 3 years, med school's 4.
Yeah.
However, residency's at least 3. So why would the PA choose not to? Liability, being underneath somebody?
That's a good.
What's the?
Move to master's degree is fairly recent. And we have a 3+3 program where you can come in with 90 hours of college and go through the program. So there is time. I will tell you, out of the 672 applications we got, only 24 people didn't have a degree already. Part of it is that you are talking about a different process. It is longer because you're going to have to consider residency on top of that. And that has part of it may be cost. Medical school is what, 40,000, 50,000 a year. We're about 7,000. The other thing is, what are you seeking in life? And I tell people, you know, if you want to be a medical, you need to go to medical school if that's what you want to do, because you'll never be happy as a PA if you really want to go to medical school. And you should, because there's a place for you, but there's also something that you have to sacrifice to do that. And so it's just a different thing. I will tell you, if you really look at PA work hours, are almost the same. Whatever their supervising physician works, they work the same hours. So, I don't know. It's a good question, and one of the things that when I went to PA school, it was very rare to find a PA school longer than 24, 26 months. There were actually some shorter. Now it's very rare to find one less than about 2.5 years, 27, 28, 20, 30. All the programs in Texas, I think, are getting in close to 30 months or better. So I think that's a valid question, but I also think it's a matter of choice of lifestyle and where you want to take yourself in a profession. And when people go, well, you know, I really think I might want to go to medical school, I'm all for them because we need lots of doctors. 2 reasons. one, to hire PAs. The other, I need as many people out there to take care of me in a few more years as I can get. So that's a good point. And PA starting salaries, usually in the range of $60,000, some more, some less, unless you go to work for a cardiovascular surgeon or someone like that. The starting salary, average starting salary for a family physician is about 120 or 25. So there's a disparity there. But the time that it takes to get there and what you have to do is also different. So there's a different reward. I will tell you, it's really interesting. 75% of all PA students are women. 55% of all PAs are women now. And certainly when I started, they were all men. So
Why do you
it's
think that's?
ma'am?
Why do you think that's?
Well, for one reason, we've got a real strange phenomenon in this country. Men have stopped going to college. If you look at who's graduating from college, it's not men, it's women. When you look at who's going to medical school in increasing number, it's women. And that's a real, that's a real concern. Maybe they're just waiting for the women to get well educated, get good jobs, and now they stay at home. I don't know. I think that PA for a woman offers her a shorter period that gives her a job that may be more acceptable in some ways, maybe easier to have family, although I think that's a real myth. Because if your doc doesn't hire you so you can go home at 5 o'clock and they can stay and work. So no one really knows why we have this phenomenon in this country that men have stopped going to college, period. I mean, if you look at it's incredible, and no one knows why that is. A few years ago, you could have said, well, they all want to start .coms and become rich, but I'm not sure that holds out. Other questions? Yes,
What did you
ma'am?
say the cost for medical school is right
I think it's about $50 a year. I don't know, somebody can tell me, does anyone know?
now?
It's-
It's not that bad.
Not that bad, okay.
My husband-
But it's not $7,000 or $8,000 a year.
No,
That's
it's
for
more than that.
tuition. Yeah.
Between those two.
I don't know. I think the state reimburses you at $50,000 per medical student, regardless of what their tuition is, something like that.
I know he's taking out lots of
Do I?
money. But I just know we're taking out lots of money for him.
Well, this is a good time to take out student loans. The interest rates are fine. Someone could find that out and maybe let everyone know, because I just kind of pull it off. I think it's somewhere around there. I don't know. So, other questions?
What do you think the difference is between the nurse practitioner and the PA?
Okay, that's a good question. What's the difference between a nurse practitioner and we're actually an offer that? In fact, we just looked at a study in class this morning that said in terms of what they do clinically, it's hard to tell them apart. And if you look at the practice laws and what nurse practitioners and PAs can do in the state of Texas, they're almost identical. What's different is that they are nurses first, and they are generally educated by nurses, and most PA programs use mostly PAs and physicians. I think their education also has a little different orientation. It really may be more holistic in a lot of ways. It has a lot of social aspects to it, and it's typically a little bit shorter too because of their experience as nurses. We take people with no healthcare experience and we've taken people with 30 years, and we take them through the process. I've worked with nurse practitioners. My last medical visit was with a nurse practitioner, and when I look at what they do compared to what PAs do, you can't tell the difference. It really points that you can get to the same point in lots of different directions.
So, I know a doctor from Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
and they come to this country. What are the requirements for them?
Yeah.
coming to Canada?
Sure. The question was, if foreign trained physicians come here, what would be the requirements for them to enter a PA program? It would be exactly the same for someone who enters who would be an American student. Now, they can, well, we've had 4 or 5 already. And what they can do is they can have their work interpreted and then applied to prereqs and things like that. And they have to come in just like everyone else. And we've had 4 or 5. And we have a foreign trained physician come in our next class, so she'll probably be our next. And they've all completed the program and they've all done well. But the problem is, if you look for shortcuts or you start cutting things off, everybody comes and wants something because you gave it to somebody else. So our administration decided early on when I came here is that we would just hold fast to this line that everyone has to meet the prereqs and be chosen in the same manner. And there is a group of people out there that could be resources. We just have to sometimes find a way to help. Other questions? Oh, yes, ma'am.
What's the
Average age of,
getting into PA school?
I've taken someone 20 and I've taken someone 55. UT Southwestern is admitting a guy 67 and 162 this year. Average age is about 30.
30.
But the range is wide. Remember, all those old folks up at the top pool. But we took a person who was 20. She graduated from high school at 16, had her bachelor's degree at 20. So she was ready. We've taken the guy at 55 here. That's been our oldest. So generally, it's always been around that 28, 30, 30 to 32 range for each of our classes. So PA students tend to be a little bit older than other students coming directly out of college. But it's the average is older because some of the people are older. Age is not a hindrance becoming a PA. Yes, ma'am.
It was interesting to me that the doctors promoted this.
Yes.
I am wondering why is it that some of the dental profession is threatened by hygienists moving in these positions?
You already know the answer.
It's Texas.
It
We're a very
is
conservative state.
interesting that early on there was a lot of support from professional medical organizations for PAs. And I think the reason why is because the original concept was for individuals who would go to rural areas, practice in primary care, and when all the specialists discovered that PAs could be pretty good assistants, and I think there was some resistance there. PA programs actually, up until about the mid-'80s or maybe the late '80s, were accredited by a committee of the AMA. And the AMA wanted to get out of the accrediting business, period, so it was pushed off. The AMA itself is generally neutral on PAs. And it's like everything. You have people that are just adamantly against, people that are adamantly for. You go over to this emergency room, you'll find emergency room docs that are probably adamantly for. Because we'd have to close it and get rid of all their PAs, and it'd be very expensive to replace those PAs with physicians. It's the same. I understand what you're talking about coming from dental hygiene. I just want to see my hygienist and avoid the dentist like the plagues. She's much nicer than he is. So that may be part of it. Other questions? Well, certainly, if you want to know anything about PA profession, we have a website through the UTHSCSA website. We hold applicant orientations one Saturday a month. If you just want to come, and you won't hear much different, except it's in more detail. And you certainly are free to come visit us or talk to us or give us a call. We're really very friendly most of the time. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.